And you know what time it is. It's the best hour of the week, Real Sense Now, with your host, Dawood Bedrosian, the podcast and radio show where we uncover the untold stories of what's trending in our world of real estate and, of course, entrepreneurship. Here on Real Sense Now, we would like to serve you as being your guide to all things real estate. On our show today, we have a very special guest joining us. Not only is he a real estate expert, he's an old friend of mine, and he's a true hero in the field. Please welcome Bobby Baldor. Bobby, thanks for being a part of my show.
Dawood, thank you for having me.
You've had an impressive background in real estate and mortgage lending, not to mention an extensive experience as a U.S. Marine as well, too. Can you share with us your journey as to how you became such a prominent figure in real estate and why did you pick real estate?
I fell into real estate by accident. I think when I first got out of the Marines, I had an opportunity to get into mortgage lending, and I started my career in this industry as a mortgage banker. Um, as the mortgage crisis happened in '07, '08, '09, I happened to have gotten my real estate license at the same time, and I was at the right place at the right time. I had an opportunity to partner with somebody who was working with a lot of the banks and the at the time selling the REOs and the foreclosures, which led me to a very quick and easy transition from the mortgage lending side to the real estate side and dealing with such a large volume of properties that were coming through the portals of foreclosures allowed me to really speed the average learning curve of real estate. And I had to learn everything from triplicate contracts and documents. You had your state documents, your brokerage documents, and then all the ones that Fannie, Freddie, or the banks required for the foreclosures. And I really had a good understanding by the time all of that was over of contracts and all the minutia that goes into getting in and out of situations with contingencies or whatever. And it allowed me to transition that into general real estate in a way that most realtors in that same amount of period don't get that experience and don't get that level of scrutiny when they're overlooking your paperwork as much as I had.
I think what's really interesting is that time period really kind of defined or created a really resilient generation of realtors that were able to not only navigate through the times very quickly, but learn about so many things that were changing at such a rapid space, whether it was short sales, foreclosures, how to buy tapes of properties, and
That's
so on
right.
and so forth. You know, I love having guests like you on the show because your dedication to this industry is truly inspiring. But I really want to dive into some key topics that I'm sure all of our listeners are eager to learn about. We've all heard about this $418 million NAR proposed settlement, which is the National Association of Realtors. Top headlining stories on probably every radio show, channel, news station, on the web, the whole 9 yards. The story's been trending, the headlines are all over the place, and the mainstream media isn't necessarily lying to you. They're just headlining, sorry, let me rephrase, inaccurate information. And what do I mean by that? What we know today is most likely going to change. But what I do want to do is have this conversation so that our listener at least can hear it directly from our industry experts that are in the depths of this, navigating through all of the changes that are happening before our very own eyes. So, this is what we know. So the NAR has reached an agreement resolving a nationwide claim brought by home sellers concerning the MLS corporative compensation model rule, okay, which is set to take place in July 2024. Basically, NAR will pay or is proposing to pay $418 million over 4 years to settle industry compensation lawsuits out of court. NAR has agreed to implement a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS, and NAR has agreed to a new rule requiring MLS participants to enter into written agreements with their buyers. What we don't know is what this new norm will be, especially between buyers and sellers and between listing agents and buyers agents. And what I want to do today is unravel from absolutely every single aspect, the buyer's perspective, the seller's perspective, the listing agent's perspective. I want to know the pros and cons of what we're going to be covering, what we're going to be sharing and educating people who are listening to our show. I've personally been researching and prepping this topic for the last couple of weeks, and I definitely wanted to come and um, provide a lot more information other than just the headline news. What we've seen in the headlines is the standard 6% commission is gone. Sellers will no longer have to pay 6%. The problem is, and I know that one thing needs to be made clear before we start. There's never been a precedent set that there was a 6% commission that a seller had to pay, period. So I'm going to fire away with a bunch of questions for you and start this conversation so that we can go from there. First questions. Seller has always been able to manage negotiating the commission that they're going to pay their agent, correct?
That is absolutely true. That hasn't changed at all. Commissions have been negotiable since I've been a licensed agent. And to unravel a little bit of the settlement, because it's 108 pages of a very in-depth legalese. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to interpret the settlement. What I am going to do is kind of speak in layman's terms as much as I can. I'm a Marine. I like to say I like to talk in crayon. So, I want to make sure that it's very understandable, because what they did was remove the ability to advertise the commission, but they didn't change the ability to pay it. They just removed the advertisement of it, and they wanted to decouple the stereotype by including more disclosures. So I can get into the depths of that, but that's really 108 pages is going to come down to a couple of key points. And if properly explained, most people understand most of the industry isn't changing. We're just adapting and doing it slightly different. It's almost when we get through this, you'll understand in a lot of ways it's a 3-card monte. An apple's still an apple. It just looks like an orange. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that.
So from a seller's perspective, how do you foresee negotiating commissions with the listing agent in light of this NAR lawsuit settlement?
Okay, so the NAR settlement has nothing to do with negotiating commissions with your listing agent.
Thank you for sharing that.
The listing agent is going to come and interview for a job. And you might interview one agent, you might interview 5. And more than likely, you're going to hire the best one, and the best one's going to come with the price tag that the best one comes with. Now, not all sellers agree to that, and a lot of sellers think that, the value of what a listing agent is going to provide is different. But that has been the history of going into a listing appointment forever. And that's not going to change. Sellers are looking at clickbait news that says it's the end of a set commission. There's never been a set commission. But what they don't understand, and what the underlying might be, is that the MLS is going to change a field, but not remove its intent almost. The field is no longer in any way, shape, or form allowed to disclose or offer a compensation. However, what it is going to be able to do is offer the seller's advertised or pre-negotiated with the listing agent offer of concession directly to a buyer. And if that field, and we say if, because a lot of this is unknown on how they are going to implement it. But as we know it today, the field is literally going to change. It's still going to be forward-facing and public. And now the average buyer that's looking at several homes to go look at with their realtor, they're going to see more than likely, what is talked about, what's proposed, is the field of this home seller is offering this much in buyer concessions and this one's offering this much. They're no longer calling it a commission to the buyer's realtor, but it is still an advertised concession. So, the net sheet to a seller, you asked how it's going to affect the seller. If properly explained how it's always been done, you can always negotiate the commissions to the listing agent and the buyer's agent and explain what that looks like in pros and cons and a net sheet. The verbiage is almost identical. We're just substituting compensation with concession to a buyer and explaining the pros and cons and what that looks like on a net sheet.
So let's go to the buyer side now. How do you plan to navigate the changes in commission structures when it comes to working with a buyer's real estate agent?
That has changed, and that is going to be the stickiest of the transition, because For the most part, while it's always been recommended that a realtor enter into a written agreement with a buyer, it's not been the standard of practice. The National Association of Realtors have for a very long time preached that they want that to be the standard of practice, but most agents never did. And it's just, it wasn't the way business was mostly done. You liked the property, you called the realtor showed you the house. That has absolutely changed, because what the settlement now proposes is that before touring a home, now we don't understand what the true definition of touring a home is going to be, but for layman's terms, if you want to go see a house, you have to enter into an agreement with a realtor first before they open the door, before they let you in. We don't know what that agreement's going to be. And I believe it's going to be broker by broker and individual realtor to realtor different, because we are all independent contractors in many ways, and we're not set by any set commissions or anything, and everybody's going to run their own business. So what I anticipate, there'll be a couple of different versions. And the first version might be, hey, to show you this first home, if you like it, this is what the compensation looks like, but you are required to, before touring the home, sign the agreement, and the agreement has to identify the amount that of my relationship with you is going to cost. Can I negotiate it directly from the seller? Yes. It's not advertised on MLS, but I'm not forbidden, and nor is it frowned against negotiating directly with a seller or a listing agent to come from the listing broker's um, um, compensation, or from the seller, or negotiating it for the buyer to pay me in the form of a concession. It just means that before I show you the home now, I have to enter into that agreement.
One of the pros here is the fact that at least the buyer and the buyer's agent understand one another's responsibility to one another, and more importantly, the obligation and the duty that they're going to be providing. Before, a lot of buyers would call an agent, go tour a bunch of homes, and then just give it to their niece, nephew, who's a realtor, or whatever the case may be. And I think what ends up happening is, in the industry, you tend to hear this phrase of buyers are liars, because they're never really telling you the truth. And now you'd be forced to have an open dialogue where we understand each other's expectations and compensation if it's coming from the buyer side as well too. Which brings me to my next question. How do you anticipate the elimination of this required commission? Because I mean, we clearly are not going to be able to work for free. It is a profession. We are providing a professional service. The question is, what will the elimination of this required commission offer buyers agents in the MLS, and how will it impact the buyer agent relationship?
So that is not 100% accurate. They're not eliminating the ability for a seller to offer compensation to a buyer's broker. They're eliminating the advertisement of it on the MLS and only the MLS. I'll give you an example. I could enter a property as a listing agent on the MLS, but if I've already negotiated with my seller and explained the pros and cons of offering a buyer's broker compensation, I'm not going to advertise it anywhere on any field that's associated through the MLS platform. But could I advertise it on my own website? If you, representing a buyer, called me and said, I have a buyer interested, is the seller offering compensation to the buyer's broker? I can easily tell you, yes. And here's what it is. They haven't eliminated that. They've taken it away from being advertised as a mandate on the platform. That's the only change. It could be on every listing agent's website. It could be on every listing agent's, phone call, if it's a set phone call or something like that. So they haven't eliminated that.
So I want to talk about strategies now. So as a seller, what strategies would they employ to attract buyers agents to show their property without the requirement of this commission up front? I mean, is it just, I have a really beautiful property here. I know that a lot of buyers are not going to be clear in terms of what kind of compensation are they going to get. How do you propose we can navigate through that so that we can attract more buyers and buyers agents to learn more about these properties and bring them to the home?
So most homes are going to advertise themselves based on, the price point. Are they priced right? Do they fit the criteria that specific buyers are looking for? However, the offer of compensation, either directly to a buyer's broker or through a buyer and paying their closing costs and concessions, is something that is still allowed. Now, advertising it to the buyer's broker is not allowed on the MLS, but it can be. So to answer your question, a listing agent needs to sit down with their sellers and explain the pros and cons of offering compensation. Let's call it concessions to the buyer and eliminate the word compensation.
Correct.
Although part of the listing presentation could be, are you willing to offer, whether it's in the form of off-market compensation to the buyer's broker or directly to the buyer in paid closing costs, a certain amount. I can advertise a buyer's concessions, and that's going to attract more buyers to your marketplace or to your property. And you got to understand, over 90% of all properties, 90% of all buyers can't afford down payment, closing costs, and now buyer's commissions. So when they're asking their realtors who they've now hired to show them multiple properties, the seller has to be the one that's saying, please come into my store. Please come look at my house, and here's what I'm advertising in concessions versus my 5 neighbors.
I love it. Bobby, you definitely have shared the wealth of information. Unfortunately, for this segment, we're going to need to sign off. You're listening to Dawood Bedrosian right here on Real Sense Now. If you have a real estate question, all you have to do is call in or text 321-229-1217 or visit my website at realsensenow.com, and we'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions. If you're on the net, all you got to do is visit me on any one of my social media platforms. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram by just typing in my name, Dawood Bedrosian. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can watch all of these episodes whenever you want. Welcome back to Real Sense Now with your host, Dawood Bedrosian. We're unraveling the mysteries of what's going on in our real estate world today. In our last segment, we explored the implications of the National Association of Realtors proposed lawsuit settlement. And I have a fantastic guest, an expert in the field, Bobby Baldor. So please buckle up because you're about to hear some invaluable insights. So despite how the news sounds, there's been a lot of misconceptions in terms of what the headlines are reading. I believe from an agent perspective, a professional in the field, all of these changes present, in fact, a phenomenal opportunity. Yes, I said opportunity in terms of how a professional in this space will be able to transform their business, acquire greater market share, and develop key skills in self-development and communication, because being the best agent that you can be to represent your buyer and seller is what's going to set you apart from the crowd. So what we know that's on the table right now is that the DOJ wants the decoupling of commissions, where the seller negotiates their commission and the buyer negotiates their commission as well too. And what we're going to see is how this is going to impact the commission model, first and foremost. So that's one of the first things we're going to tackle. The settlement aims to decouple buyer and seller agent commissions. The impacts are uncertain, but I think it's going to have a pressure in terms of reducing what was perceived as the overall commission that a seller would pay. I think sellers are going to be in a position where they're going to negotiate lower commissions, and I think we may be like many other markets, New York, Chicago, Canada, Miami, where the average commission for the most part is approximately 5%. So we're talking about a decrease from the perception of a 6% total commission, which was never, ever the golden standard. And we'll probably see that happen. Bobby, would you agree?
No.
No? What's your thoughts on it?
I think that the perception of a 6% and the way that the headlines are reading it are emphasizing incorrectly the decoupling. Okay, so if you think about the decoupling, what that was aimed to do and how it's going to make agents better was because of a lack of transparency and disclosure on the representation of a buyer and a seller and where that was coming from. So sellers, let's just use 6% as what the headlines are saying, was paying, a seller was paying their listing agent to represent them. but in essence was paying the buyer's representative. And what they're trying to do is decouple it. So you're going from 6 to, let's say, 3. And I'm saying, those are the news numbers, because every realtor offers a different compensation, whether
Correct.
it's 5, 6, 7, 9,
10,
whatever it
whatever,
is,
yeah.
right? It doesn't matter. But what they did was decouple that perceived 6% from all coming from the seller. So that is why I disagreed with you, because I don't think it's going to
By the way,
lower.
it's not my opinion. It's just a feeling that I'm getting. I can see it going both ways.
Yeah, we
So
don't know how it's
yeah,
going to play out. And actually, you said something very interesting, market share. I think that the market share for realtors is going to shift, because now there's a greater need in realtors who can properly explain and disclose. And at the essence of all of these lawsuits and the DOJ stepping in was a perception of you know the way compensation was presented and almost mandated. And that's never been the case, but nobody was explaining it, nobody was disclosing it properly. And now you're going to face agents, that can't do it. You've been doing it a long time. You can go into a conversation with a buyer and a seller and explain your worth, but also explain where it's coming from and why. But I guarantee agents that you start training, they're not going to have that skill, and you're going to have to work with them. Some are not going to adapt to that skill. So I guess the question is, how do you adapt? And what's going to be your method for changing the business or training your agents?
it's incredibly simple. Thankfully, we live in an age of technology, for starters. What we've seen, unfortunately, in this industry is as the real estate market becomes hotter and hotter, you have a rush of new agents coming into the market thinking, just like all the TV shows that they watch on Netflix or
Right.
whatever the case may be, that you're going to be selling 20, 30, $40 million properties with these huge commission feeds that you see in the bottom left, bottom right corner of the screens. It's not true. It's a really challenging business to be in. It's really more than just a business of buying and selling.
You nailed it, by the
Yeah,
way, because the average price point, is depending on the market, 350, 400, 450, and you're dealing with so many first-time buyers. You're
correct.
dealing, even the buyers that aren't first time, maybe they haven't bought another home in the last 7, 8, 10 years, 15 years.
Mhm.
They're relying on your knowledge to get them
Correct.
through disclosures and inspections. And a lot of realtors have missed the mark on doing their job, and led to this perception of, they're not able to do what, or the buyers can do it on their own, or they're not worth whatever it is that they're saying they're worth. And I think the market share, like you said, is going to shift for the agents that not only can communicate the value proposition of what it is they do for a living, but then deliver on it.
I'm going to walk you through this. There's several tiers in terms of how you generate income, whether it's in real estate, whether it's in your own personal business, whether it's in a job that you're in. And I'm going to walk you through it. And I'm going to tip you on a secret, a big secret. And I think this is where the game changer, where those who listen to or echo some of the guidance that I'm sharing may very well excel in leaps and bounds. When you first start off, you're trading time for money.
Right.
Whether it's a regular job, whether you're trying to do as many deals as you can in any space, whether it's financial services, mortgages, whatever the case may be, it's really hard to find customers. So you're spending a lot of time, and your ROI in terms of the investment that you're putting in usually is less. But like a snowball, it picks up over time and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you level up. The next way to level up is to unify people together, build a team, have a number of teams, have a number of locations if you're a bricks and mortar type of business, and you'll be able to generate greater income for your business through an entrepreneurial endeavor of unifying people together. Just think of a restaurant manager, think of
Hmm.
a team leader, same thing. But the real game changer is exactly what you said. It's communication. Because in today's advent of technology, he who communicates the loudest, the clearest to their audience, to their customer base, is the one that is able to A, captivate their attention. They're already passively prospecting them. They're building trust without even having to sit in on a listing presentation. I think video is key. I think podcasts are key. I think educating people is key. I stopped selling a long time ago. and started to focus on becoming the educator. Listen, if you like me, you're going to pick me.
Right.
If I turn on the TV and I'm looking at something on the news, I like the way the news is being delivered by that one person. If I want to see the weather, that one person, to me, makes me feel better about knowing what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. Same thing with real estate. Use your voice, communicate, and you will start to see things change. I've already seen it right now where people are calling me and asking me about my opinion about this issue, my opinion about a market, my opinion about a trend in real estate. And it's happening through video, it's happening through social media, it's happening through comments on YouTube, it's happening in text messages. That's the new way of generating business. If you're able to communicate value, people will find value in you and want to use you. I'm going to give you a classic example. I don't want to say this to kind of pat my back in any which way, or toot my own horn, toot toot. But you know, I got a lead through a friend for a $2.3 million house. And when I spoke with the buyer, he was like, "Hey, I just wanted to talk to you and get to know you better." And I said, "That's great. I know we've never met, so do you want to get on a Zoom?" He's like, "No, I've seen all your videos. I know exactly how you deliver. I'm choosing you because you are the person that can communicate what my vacation rental looks like and
Right.
sell the story or share the story with the world." And I'm telling you, it's opportunities like that that's going to set you apart from everybody else and allow you the key to walk into many rooms and sit at many tables as well too.
Education is the key. And as the market shifts and the market share shifts from agents, you're going to start seeing a separation where communication is delivered clearly, concisely, but can be trusted, right? And many agents don't take the time to educate themselves on many issues, whether it's property valuation,
Correct.
understanding the minutiae involved in all the legalities of a contract, a simple contract. They don't understand the contingencies. They really don't. I deal with it every single day, and when the market's hot and you don't have realtors that have to explain, have to disclose, and they're able to get one here and one there, they feel it's great. But what this has all done, it shifted the disclosure and the necessity to be a good communicator, which in essence is being a good educator.
Correct.
But you can't be a good educator
If you're not
if you're not educated, right? And that will 100% create a difference in the market. And the ones that don't take the time to learn their trade, to really understand, I'm considered, an expert in my field, and you're coming to me as a buyer or a seller with a very big decision, with a very
Probably the biggest decision in your life.
financially,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? And if I cannot explain to you without looking at a computer why I think your home might be worth what it might be worth, and explain that to you from the point of view of possibly an appraiser, not an estimate online, you're failing your client. And now it's going to show. Now it's going to show. And now you have to show your worth. I used to tell people, as one of my things was, I don't really want you to worry about the details. That's what you hired me for. I don't need you to see how the sausage is made. I'm going to deliver you a very tasty sausage.
Such a bad metaphor, like
It
in
is.
every way
Right.
possible. Let's try
Horrible.
something else.
Yeah, let's call it I
Pizza.
don't know, pizza.
Okay.
But now the thing is, I want you to see the art in making the pizza. I want you to see me throw it in the air and toss it around. So by the time you're tasting it, you've seen
Such
the
a
work
better
that's
visual
going.
than
Yeah,
anything
hey.
to do with that sausage.
All right, we'll get rid of the
Okay.
sausage. My point is this: is that now understanding the process of making it, but having to explain that process to show your worth, to show the dollar amount that slice costs versus the one down the street. That's important. And most agents can't do that now, and they're not going to do it tomorrow.
I want to bring up another concern that I have. Once again, I really don't know how this is all going to fare out. We do know that buyers are going to have to sign a buyer agreement. Okay, let's go on the assumption that buyers have to pay the buyer's agent's commission.
Well, there's no assumption there.
Okay.
It's part of the settlement.
Okay, correct. I'm saying that based on the fact that let's assume that the buyer is a first-time home buyer trying to purchase this property, probably doesn't have all of the down payment or much of the down payment.
Yeah.
Nor do they have closing costs.
Yeah.
And now on top of that, have to pay lender fees and buyer's commission.
Right.
To me, it sounds like a disaster when it comes to affordability.
So I agree with you. And, this is above our pay grade, and we're not going to really see how a lot of this pans out. We have not seen how lending is going to adapt to this. We haven't seen yet, and we probably won't see immediately, if they change down payment requirements or if they change allowable concessions. There's so much unknown right now, and we don't know, how the market's going to look when this all starts. It's also not going to look the same from when it starts for 18 months down the road after that. The market's going to dictate the way it works and the way it flows. The buyer does now, when this goes into effect, has to actually have a written agreement to hire a realtor. It's really going to be important for a realtor to be able to negotiate on their behalf. You have to have the skills to understand the affordability of your client
Correct.
and work on their behalf and by the way, maybe that's why the decoupling happened, to really emphasize the difference in representation. Who's representing the seller and who's representing the buyer. Sellers can still offer it.
Correct.
And if they want to sell their house and they know that over 90% of buyers that are in the average price point aren't going to have the funds to cover everything you just said, they're going to advertise that concession, or they're going to inform their listing agent, I am willing to do this. It's not on the MLS, but a phone call away, you'll see that, hey, it's covered. And then you can start handling that for your buyer.
I love it. Once again, you're sharing us with a lot of phenomenal information. We're really tackling a lot of different perspectives, buyer's perspective, seller's perspective, in terms of how we're addressing and navigating through this issue with the settlement that's been headlines all over the place. It's your host, Dawood Bedrosian. You're listening to Real Sense Now. I want you to stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to get deeper into this topic and try and uncover a lot of the misconceptions and demystify what's happening in the world of real estate. You've been tuning into an incredible discussion where we've been exploring the broader impacts of this National Association of Realtor lawsuit we've all been hearing about, and the settlement that nobody seems to know what's going to shape up in the coming months or even in the year to come, and how it will impact our real estate market. So I'm glad you're tuning in to Real Sense Now. I'm joined by an incredible guest, Bobby Baldor. We've been friends for a long time. I value his opinion, and he's just been dropping bombs when it comes to valuable insights about what's happening, how we're going to be navigating through this from a buyer's perspective, from a seller's perspective, from an agent perspective. We're really trying to encompass a better understanding on the whole with whatever limited information that we have at this point in time. So Bobby, thanks for joining me on the show today. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the potential long-term effects of these changes and how they're going to impact the real estate market. How do you see them playing out in the coming months or even year?
I think there's going to be a lot of confusion at first. I think that there's going to be a lot of different and unique ways of agents starting to practice real estate. How is it that the listing agents start approaching this to educate and garner more sellers? And what are the realtors that spend a lot of time representing buyers? How do they explain this? How do they process this and work with their partners on this? And then find a way to really navigate the difficulties of it with their buyers. And there's going to be a lot of unknowns, a little bit of a Wild West territory that we're going to enter. And then what's going to happen is we're going to cross up the unknown into a civilization, and that civilization will be a new norm. I don't know what that new norm is going to be, and in many ways every individual market is going to determine its own new norm. Miami and New York and LA are going to have very different ways of doing business. As a matter of fact, in New York, they don't even participate in the
Yeah,
MLS.
yeah.
So the truth is that every market's going to create its new norm of operating business. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. We're going to go through some bumps and bruises to get there.
Absolutely. And I shared with you a listing agreement from a big brokerage, big brand brokerage in Miami, that on the listing agreement said, check off whatever commission rate you wanted, and literally started from 7 and went up to 9. So every market is different depending
Right.
on what's going on and how we're going to navigate through it. Yes, we don't know how, what the outcomes are going to be, but the way we started this conversation was, if you were to go back to 2008, yes, the commissions were whatever they were. Who cares? The market was so difficult to navigate through, to understand how to secure a great deal, how to buy this short sale foreclosure, how long it was going to take before you went into contract to, and we thought that that was going to be the norm forever and ever and ever. Now you go onto the MLS and they're almost impossible to find.
And there
It's a
was a lot of
handful.
laws that changed. The
Correct.
TRID laws in lending
Yes.
came about after that, and in many ways people thought that that was going to make mortgage lending more difficult and closings were going to take longer, and a lot of the uncertainty and unknown in that. And that wasn't true. I mean, we're still closing today. You could close a deal in several weeks,
Yeah.
with financing and done everything right. So it's just figuring it out. And when I say the new norm per market, I'm not talking about a set commission.
No, no, no.
I'm
Of course,
talking
yeah.
about
The way
how
we
they do
interact.
business,
Yeah,
how do they
exactly.
interact? What does one agency's, a
Hmm.
brokerage's agreement look like that might different than another one?
Correct.
And then that's called free market.
Yep.
And then you're gonna say, XYZ Realty and ABC Realty, which one is offering something that I like, or more importantly, which one has the realtor that I want to work with.
And in terms of technology, how do you envision the role of technology evolving through this landscape right now amidst all of these changes as
I
well too?
think there's gonna be some phenomenal technologies that come out as a result of this that are born from this. We don't even know what they are.
So do you think they're going to be like prop tech companies,
I
like
couldn't.
the big Zillows,
Yeah, yeah.
Realtor.coms,
So
that kind of stuff?
so possibly. So if you think about the settlement has when talking about not advertising compensation on the MLS, but allowed it to be advertised on your website or on something else. So is there going to be a technology that comes down the road that allows sellers to market their property to the biggest audience by advertising the concessions or the willingness to offer a compensation, but they can't use the MLS platform? So does that mean that there is going to be a sister platform or a competing platform or just something else that says, and the rest of the story is, here's the primary information on the property via MLS and its feeds. But is there going to be a technology that offers something else? Now let's talk about the buyer. Now you have to show up at the door, and before giving a tour, you have to have somebody acknowledge to hire you in one way, shape, or form, whatever it is. How much are we going to show up with a piece of paper and a pen, or is there going to start being a set of technologies that you share with a buyer before you get to the door, or that you share with them right there that you can enter into some sort of agreement before the tour, but still give them the opportunity to have the tour? There's going to be technologies that are going to be born from this, and we just don't know what they are, but they're going to make us more efficient and they're going to allow us to communicate better, and that's a good thing. And I'm really hoping that there's a platform for communication that is developed to eliminate those realtors that don't answer the damn phone.
Correct.
Answer the damn phone.
And there's a lot of them.
And now, if you think about the way that the settlement is if you want to negotiate your compensation, you can pick up the phone and call the other agent. How is that going to work when you're dealing with those agents that don't answer the damn phone?
And the reality of the situation, this is common practice when it comes to commercial real estate
Correct.
deals as well too.
Right.
Call the agent and you say, hey, are you offering any kind of compensation? Yes, no. Okay, hey buyer, this is what it's going to look like.
Correct.
But I think in terms of technology, especially when it comes to vetting your listing agent, vetting your buyer's agent, I think technologies such as all of these social media platforms, YouTube, really add value for your value offering proposition to or unique selling proposition to your buyer or to your seller in terms of what services you can offer. People will start to see your perceived value and they will compensate you for it. People want to work with competent experts that are able to educate them, do this transaction in the smoothest way possible, make it as frictionless as possible, and ensure the highest return if you're on the seller side or the best deal if you're on the buyer side.
And you have to be edified. And the best way to be edified is through, what have other people said about you? And right now, it depends on how you got, let's say, a review. Did you get a review on Google or Zillow or Realtor.com or Yelp or whatever? And again, are there going to be technologies that merge all the reviews for something that's easy for the buyer that has to meet a stranger, and that stranger says, I'm a really good realtor? Can there be a technology that says, let me check, And of course you could now, but you have to what? Go on each one individually and figure out, where are they getting all their reviews. I know agents that are strictly Google reviews, some are strictly Zillow reviews, but is there going to be a new technology that says, hey, here's who I am and here's where you could find all the things that other people say about working with me.
You know what? I wish you didn't say this in front of everybody, because we could have probably come up with some
I'm
technology all
saying
by
this is
ourselves.
proprietary knowledge.
Okay, knowledge.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I like it. I like it. So, as a real estate professional, how are you planning to educate your clients about these implications with the settlement as far as their transactions are concerned?
I want to be as transparent about it as possible. I'm not waiting for buyers and sellers to ask me about it or wondering if they know about it. It has already become part of my conversation with everybody, because at the underlying principles of all the settlement is disclosure. And making sure that we're doing a good job of that should have been standard practice, and we should be doing that no matter what. I'm doing it up front right now. I've already updated some of my presentations and my listing agreements, and I've got verbiage that already explains some of this information and how a seller or a buyer can negotiate their commissions, and absolutely negotiable.
I love that. And I think that's really the age that we live in today. I think people can sniff out the selling,
Right.
the salesman sleazy stuff, and I think educating people, being transparent, being authentic is the only way to go. Like, as I said before, I stopped selling a long time ago, and I think the minute we started to shift into education, people will start to see the value in whatever it is that they're looking to purchase, and whether they decide to move forward on it or not is based on their willingness and their ability to want to pull the trigger at that point in time.
Cost is only a factor in the absence of value.
Absolutely.
Many realtors are not confident in their own abilities to have the conversation about their own worth. I'm not one of those people. I know what I'm worth. I know what I can deliver for a buyer or a seller. And you know what? It doesn't matter if it's first class on an airplane or anything else. Good service can be expensive. Find out how
No,
much
no,
it
good service
costs.
should be expensive.
Should be expensive.
Yeah.
But you find out how much bad service could be. Bad service could be cost you a fortune.
And listen, a handbag is a handbag, a car is a car, a home is a home, a restaurant is a restaurant. You're going to pay for the service, for the quality, for everything that you're looking for. If you want the best, pay the best.
Yeah, there's like I think the National Association of Realtors or Florida Realtors, one of them just put out a thing that said, the 184 points of what a buyer's agent does. And
Oh, I read that one.
yeah,
It's so interesting.
and if you read it and you think about it, I've never counted. I
No,
mean,
no, but you don't
all
also
this.
realize how many things that you do.
Right.
Whether it's finding the right property, going from there. Listen, last question. How do you foresee the changes in terms of how it impacts the competitiveness of the real estate market, particularly when it comes to two things: market dynamics and pricing?
I'm not sure it's going to have an impact on pricing at all. Let's assume for a second that sellers are thinking, I don't have to pay as much in compensation anymore. That does not translate into, so I'll lower the price. All it does is say, I can make more. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of change in regards to that.
Bobby, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
OrlandoLiving.com.
I love it. You heard it best from the best. Bobby Baldor. Go check out his website, orlandoliving.com. Of course, if you have a real estate question, do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can always reach me on my website, realsensenow.com, and or better yet, just contact me on any one of my social media platforms. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, by just typing in my name, Dawood Bedrosian. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we love to share these episodes with you so that you can watch them whenever you want. Thank you for listening to Real Sense Now. It's your host, Dawood Bedrosian, and I can't wait to speak with you next week.